It's that time. It's Thought Leader Thursday. I'm Suzanne Castle. I am so excited that you're taking some time here with me today to hear from another incredible leader who is thinking about the world a little bit differently, who is doing things differently, who is all about amazement and birthing that back out into the world. So from people like a sports psychologist to a stylist to a Hollywood screenwriter to a mompreneur, my hope is that you're being exposed to people that you want to know and that you feel like you're having coffee with. And I cannot wait for the delight that is the wonderful Charlece, but you gotta wait to meet her because she is quite a gem. Today as we begin, we're gonna have a brand new format to this show. We're expanding it a little bit, and I have to give major props to the one, the only, the magnificent Garrett, who is now the sidekick, my producer, who is laughing, making sure that I actually show up, which we're really hoping that I do, keep me on track, and remind me when I need to bring him snacks. Garrett, thank you so much for being here and making the magic happen. So I was wondering, Garrett, do you have a tagline? My tagline is bringing back the sparkle, so I'm wondering what your tagline would be.
I don't know. I haven't really thought of one.
Well, you're gonna have to think about that at some point, Garrett, because I would love to have your tagline. And all of you paying attention today, I hope that you're beginning to think about if somebody was gonna say something about you in an elevator to somebody, what would they say your tagline might be? And what does it represent about who you are and what you're thinking about in the world today? Speaking of, I want to tell you a little bit about this wonderful human. I can't even remember how many years I've known this woman. It's probably close to 20 is what I'm thinking. And she has more than 25 years of experience educating, implementing after-school leadership and arts programming for students K through 12 in Fort Worth ISD, which I think has about 45,000 students, something big, huge, and amazingly. And currently, she's the coordinator for all of that. For Fort Worth ISD, the Fort Worth After School program, where leadership happens, where arts are being birthed, and where we are just really implementing a different way of doing education and rising up leaders. And in her duty, she does training for staff, but she also really pours into kids. And you're gonna hear all about that today because I know her from all sorts of different parts of our world, but especially because of the magic she's brought into my own life and my daughter Ava's. She serves as a presenter, a panelist on education and arts for local places, for state conferences, and in addition, she's been a grant panelist for the Texas Commission of the Arts, the Arts Council of Fort Worth, Tarrant County, the City Dallas Office of Cultural Affairs Bureau. This woman really knows her stuff. She's a native Fort Worthian. That's a word, right? It's gonna be a word now. She's a native Fort Worthian, a graduate of Clark Atlanta University in Atlanta, Georgia. Here is something I bet you didn't know if you already know this woman. In the beginning of her career, she was the producer with the Sojourner Truth Players and Cultural Center. This was the very first African American theater community organization in Fort Worth, and they presented live community theater productions and had a really vibrant children's programming, performing arts classes, and productions. But for the last 20 years, here's what I want you to know about this magnificent, sparkly human. Charlece has been an active member of the Fort Worth Alliance Black School Educators in Texas for the state and the national level, and she's served on numerous committees. She's an officer on the executive board. She's been the recipient of the Alliance of Black School Educators Trailblazer Award because of her passion, how much she pours into young minds, the lives of these leaders that are going to be leading us for years to come. She's a president and owner of an events company, a consulting company where she designs sensory events around arts and education. She holds membership in all these crazy associations. And here's the thing, she never stops learning and she never stops serving. She's one of the founding members of an organization that's close to my heart called Refuge, which was a community-based religious faith and community activism around arts in the city of Fort Worth. And those creative arts brilliance that she brings really helped us out. She's married. She has an amazing son named Lance. Charlece, I hope I did you proud. I am so glad to welcome you here to the Thought Leader Thursday. Welcome.
I am so excited to be here, and thank you, Suzanne. I kept thinking about, who is she talking about?
Oh, it's you. It's you.
Right, but yes, I'm glad to be here today, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share with you as we so have done over the last 20 years in various projects. So I'm excited and delighted to be here today.
Great. I'm so glad too. You know, I was thinking when we saw each other, we got to give each other a hug. And that's a really important thing to me right now. And I don't know, those of you that are tuning in right now, it just gives me a little infusion of joy when we've had a year against human touch and without human contact. That kind of just magic, that sizzling of human to human has been really, really important. And it made me think about all the science that's coming down, all the reports that are coming down with the pandemic. We've begun to hear a little bit about what's being called SEL and what it's doing for kids, for adults, and some strategies around SEL. And I know you want to talk about that. So will you educate us on that?
Yes. One of the things I was going to say that SEL is a acronym that's used a lot in education, and even now you see it on news shows. They talk about SEL, and it stands for social emotional learning. And at the crux of it is exactly that. You're dealing with your emotions, but it's the social interaction with it, and how do you learn? Can you learn from those experiences and things in a good way to project you forward? And particularly, SEL focuses like on the brain, the heart, the mind, all of those things put together make up SEL. And one of the things that you do with SEL is the activities, but it's the interaction.
Right.
That's the key to how you interact. One of the things that I like to say is you think about, it's kind of like when you touch a nerve and you have a reaction. Well, it's the same way with SEL, if you can just imagine that it's not only focusing on your brain, it's everything happening at one time.
Yes.
And so that's where the social and emotional part of it comes in. And it's how you rail that in to be productive with it. And during this pandemic time, that has been very difficult for people because, again, having to not touch, not see people,
right.
It makes people think differently. And so there are lots of ways that you can do this, but doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go get a big textbook and I have to be an educator and they're the only ones that can learn with it.
Right.
Everyday people, it's how we interact. So everybody's in a sense of social emotional learning.
I love that. I love how you've just taken this big, really educated concept that I know is taught in the ivory towers and said, okay, now wait a minute. Really just being a human in every moment of every day, your SEL is being activated or deactivated in some way. So when you come across another human, that energy that's transmitted, it's going to rise you up in a sensory way. And it's either going to, start the neurons firing, or you're going to kind of shut down a little bit. And you really do have that kind of emotional connection or disconnection. And so I love how when you look at a student and they're coming across your work with Fort Worth ISD, for example, you really helped my kiddo. I'm a single mom, and my little waif of a kid early on was just a lost little lamb and super shy and kind of artsy, but kind of not, and wasn't really sure who she was. And you just took her under your wing and shepherded her and said, there's a program called Fort Worth After School where we get to expose you to sports and arts and business people and educational models and a snack and teachers who want to pour into you, along with people from the community, to help raise up and these kind of leaders that really, I've seen some of the people that have been a part of your program, and now they're really transforming lives in Fort Worth and beyond. So while you've done all this work in fostering leaders, I'm wondering what is the achievement gap that you're noting, and how is Fort Worth After School and your work specifically with SEL and leadership contributing to help kind of close that?
Right. One of the things, Fort Worth After School is a department within Fort Worth ISD, and it's pretty significant as that we are one of the larger organized after-school programs, particularly in Texas. And we fit very well across nationally. When we first started the department 20 years ago, that was one of our things, is that we wanted to be the best that can be. And I have to give a shout out in this to the city of Fort Worth and to Fort Worth ISD. They joined in on a collaboration together in 2000 to determine that there needed to be something for students to so the kids could be safe,
right,
grow and learn, and so they wouldn't be part of and help reduce the juvenile crime, either they being victims of crime or crime being perpetrated on them.
Correct.
And so that says again to the tone of what Fort Worth is about the family, about the people. And so Fort Worth After School took that on, and Fort Worth ISD took it on. And for 20 years, they've kept on that collaboration of both funding it, which makes it thrive, right? And so we can thrive to help kids thrive. One of the things we see in that achievement gap we're helping with is the literacy effect, the children desire to do more, want more, and to learn how to be good leaders. And so just those things you said, the caring relationships with adults, that's at the heart of any SEL. That adult relationship, again, we're going back to the human connection,
right,
that helps put that spark in you, that helps give you something and turn on. And you talk about a kids, they're having all kinds of different things going on before the pandemic.
Right.
But the singular thing is that they want to gain self-confidence. And a lot of times in the regular school day, it's, by the book, so many things that have to be accomplished in a 7-hour period, and let them be kids and grow up.
Right.
So a lot of things they don't get a chance to experience. And those other things they don't get to experience are what make them a whole child, like the arts, like talking to leaders, being able to dream about a career. How are you going to know about a career if you don't see in that career,
right,
or things that you can experience? You know about the general topics like a banker or a doctor or something like that, but did you know in the medical field that there are a long laundry list of other careers that you
right,
could have, but you may not know anything about a radiologist.
Right.
You may not know anything about someone that does that's in nursing, and that there are 3 different levels of nursing that
right,
you could possibly, a nurse practitioner, for instance. Never heard of that. You know of a nurse. But so those are things that we talk about in business side, things to that. And so that's where we pull the community in to come be in our speakers bureau. And that helps kids be able to dream and know something different. If they've never been exposed, they won't know. And so part of our mantra that we have always in the tenets of Forward After School, one of the key factors we built on is the relationship building.
Yes.
So we spend a lot of time with team building, and they don't know it's team building.
Right.
Group exercises, learning how to do project-based learning, working on a project together to get to the end. One of our fun ones that we do is recycled art, and it's a big exhibition, and we collaborate with the community with that, where kids have to create projects that coming out of everything has to be 90% has to be recyclable. It can't be brand new items, And so we pick themes, and the kids come out with some amazing projects. Plus, it opens their eyes up to waste and to recycling.
Correct.
And to saving the earth and doing their little footprint part.
Right.
Or working on community projects that get kids to see another side of Fort Worth.
Right.
So that's what we do. And it all boils back down to emotions, socially, learning.
Right. And I got to say, as someone who's been a part of that, like you have had me come in and speak several times. I came in as a former professional ballerina, and I brought tutus and shoes, and even the boys, and we did ballet, and they didn't even understand what that looked like. They hadn't been exposed in that way, except for when they would go and watch the Nutcracker, right? And I think exposing them is such a good way to just even open up conversation. And the retreats that you lead out of Fort Worth ISD, where counselors are choosing students to come and they get to do archery and they get to run around in the green outdoors, and then they might have to come and hang out with me and we play collaborative leadership games together. But what you're doing is you're really fostering this sense that everyone is a leader in some way.
Right.
And it doesn't have to look the only way you've thought that it's going to look. And I really think it's one of the most magical programs I've ever seen in existence. And I know that it is because of you and the way that you view children and the way that you view youth and how they can really contribute to society. And so one of the reasons I wanted you here is because you are thinking about that differently than most people that I interact with. And I didn't want that moment to pass by, because Ava really lit up when a poet came and worked at the after school, and that has been transformative to her as she's now applying to college, and how she thinks about her words and her words as currency to express emotions. And so as a parent, I want to say thank you. And for those of you tuning in, if you're in a big city, and check out their after school program and get involved, volunteer. If you're here in Fort Worth, call Charlece and get involved, because community partnerships is the only way that it will continue to thrive. And I definitely want Fort Worth After School to thrive for a very long time. But here is something that I think some people don't know about you. I mean, we touched on it as I was introducing you, but our work together for a long time has been around sensory art. And when we're creating interactive stations for people. So, for example, on Ray Street in front of the old post office, we did this giant mandala in chalk, and we asked people one day, just what are you grateful for?
Yes.
And we had hundreds of people come with chalk. And we have pictures of kids and parents, and they were writing on the street or drawing pictures, and the conversation that happened. You continually want to foster that in people. So tell me a little bit about that work and how you feel like that art contributes to the overall humanity and brain health.
I think for my side, all of my career has been, and even before that, has always been in the arts. I think back when I was growing up, I was a kid out of Casa Mañana.
Yes.
And went all the time to Casa Mañana. And
When it was still in the round.
It was still in the round, yes.
Yeah.
And I think arts have always drawn me. I always loved dance. I tried dance. When I look back at the pictures, I'm glad that wasn't a pathway I chose, was theater, okay? But I think, and I come from a family that appreciated the arts and wanted to make us go to the arts.
Right.
And particularly growing up, seeing all kinds of art, right? And appreciating that. And theater was my pathway, which tentacles everything else. And I think part of that with me is like it's kept me synergized. Because with art, whether it's dance or music, or like when we created that mandala, that day still sits in my memory.
Me too.
That there were people there who were very hesitant, who saw us and went away, and people came back, and it was, and you didn't have to be an artist.
Right.
You know, we're asking you to write what it is. And the power in that got people who came just out of the blue and would say, this is so moving. I really feel at peace here. And so I think that's what has been my synergy. And there's been a period where we weren't doing a lot of things, dabbling in it. But that period in my life when we were doing all of those sensory projects helped. But it's because the art works on all of your brain cells.
Yes.
And so when it's working on your brain cells, it's again getting into your emotions because it makes you express. And you're right about Ava being able to, she's, still continues to write.
Right.
And so she picked that up in 4th grade, but she still continues to write and find her voice that way. And I think that's what art does. And most people think you have to be perfect at it. I can't paint, so why would I even dabble in art? But there are all kinds of art to do. Even with those, I'm not a good painter, but there's still a soothing and a calming way that art touches your soul. Plus it gives your emotions.
Well, and I love that because I think we have relegated the arts to professional art. And one of the things that I advocate for with my work in clients is everyone is creative. And I think bankers are creative because I can't do math. Sorry, teachers. I mean, you tried really hard, but it just didn't stick. And I think everyone is creative, and we have to recapture what it means to be creative and let people unleash themselves and paint just to paint. It doesn't have to hang anywhere. It doesn't even have to sell anywhere.
Right.
And everyone's an artist now because they have a cell phone that has a camera on it. You can take moving pictures. You can take static pictures. You can have interesting angles with your selfie sticks. It's really amazing what we have access now with technology and how we really are really realigning the way that we think about art in the world. And for me, it's more like what was going on in the Renaissance, where people, all these new types of paint, all these new types of plaster, all these new types of movement and music were being birthed because there was suddenly this resurgence. And I know that your work is a lot about that resurgence. And so I am very grateful for the fact that you continue to stand in that gap and say arts matter. We can't just cut all the arts, and there's a way to access this for education that will really benefit not only the child, the youth, the adult, but the entire community at large. So I hope that you're feeling thanks and gratefulness for that.
Right, and I think the main thing is that children to grow, and when we say children, it's not just the younger ones, or you may have in your head pre-K or Ks, the little ones. It's all the way up the continuum. It's all the way through high school. It's all of that in terms of them growing and learning. For some, the arts are a refuge.
Correct.
And definitely during this pandemic time, for some, that has been, it's amazing how much people have gotten on with TikTok.
Yes, I love TikTok dances.
And they've come up with dances, or people sing,
Yes.
and they come up and stage little vignettes and things that people wouldn't have normally done.
Right.
Kids wouldn't have normally done at all. But this gave them a chance to express their expressions.
Yes. So before we hop off, I would love to ask you, I'm asking everyone, Garrett's going to be ready one of these days. I'm going to pop on and he's just going to have to say what his is. So what is your definition of what it means to sparkle?
The first thing that comes to mind for definition for sparkle is smile.
I love that.
It's smile. You think about a smile, even when you don't want to do it, you have to use everything in your body. It just automatically happens,
That's right.
And so it brings a sense of joy. From you years ago, you started a project about joy, and I picked up on that too. I was late picking up on it, but it's true. You to have joy inner side, you have to feel joy.
That's right.
And a smile makes you feel joy. That's the sparkle. And you think about, even in this pandemic, even if you're on Zoom and people are smiling,
It changes everything.
It changes everything.
It does. It does. Well, I'm so glad. Thank you for birthing goodness in my life, my kids' life, and in this wonderful, wonderful way of how you're serving the community in so many different levels. Before we hop off, I am very excited to share that our next show is going to feature a badass Facebook marketer from an international destination by the name of Charlece. You're going to definitely want to check that out. Charlece, thank you again. Garrett, thanks for making us look good and sound good. I'm Suzanne Castle, and this is the Thought Leader Thursday.